Ethan Calder crouched behind a broken metal beam, squinting through the rising dust of the Hellion expanse. The desert stretched endless in every direction, a wasteland of rusted outposts, shattered drones, and sand that burned under the twin suns. He tightened his gloves and adjusted the straps of his pack. Every step out here was a risk. Raiders didn't follow rules, they killed without hesitation. And yet, scavenging was the only way he survived. He moved quickly, his boots crunching over cracked glass and twisted metal. A whine of the wind carried the faint buzz of distant drones. Automated patrols, once reliable, now floated aimlessly, malfunctioning in the stormy heat. Ethan had learned to read their patterns. One wrong move, one miscalculation, and the drones would alert raiders or worse, collapse on him with their plasma emitters. That's when he saw them. Two shapes huddled against a pile of rocks, barely moving. At first he thought they were small desert animals, but something in the way they tilted their heads, the brightness in their eyes, stopped him cold. The closer he got, the more he realized they weren't ordinary creatures. Their scales shimmered faintly, the colors twisting like sunlight through water. Thin, ragged, and shivering, they looked like nothing he had ever seen. Ethan froze. He knew instinctively that he had to help, but the desert did not forgive hesitation. He scanned the horizon. No raiders yet. He stepped forward slowly, letting his hands show he carried no weapon. Hey, little ones, he said softly. His voice sounded strange in the emptiness, but the creatures stirred, lifting their heads. Their eyes were intelligent, almost human in emotion, reflecting pain and fear. He dropped his pack and reached in, pulling out his last ration bars. He broke them into tiny pieces, placing them carefully on a flat rock. The creatures sniffed the food, trembling. One took a cautious bite. Ethan exhaled a sigh he hadn't realized he was holding. He wanted to keep them close to make sure no one, or nothing, hurt them. You're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you, he whispered, though he had no idea how he would feed them again. The desert offered nothing freely. Every survival ration was precious. Ethan's own hunger gnawed at him, but he tore strips of his protein gel and offered them to the smaller of the two. It hesitated, then ate, making a soft, pitiful sound that tugged at his chest. The bond was immediate, fragile, and terrifyingly real. Saving them was a gamble. Raiders could find him. The storm could bury them alive. But he could not walk away. He gathered the creatures and wrapped them in his spare jacket. The wind kicked up suddenly, sand whipping against his face. He carried them to the wreck of an old sensor dome, its walls half collapsed but still standing. Inside it was dark and claustrophobic. He set them down gently, watching as they huddled together for warmth. The larger one nudged the smaller, protective even at its frail size. Ethan studied them. He had seen dragons in old historical holovids, but these creatures felt alive, present, more than just legends. And now he was responsible. He worked quickly, using shards of metal and broken panels to reinforce the dome's walls. Each clank and scrape echoed against the empty sands. He felt exhaustion pressing into his bones, but he ignored it. Raiders could come at any time, and the desert didn't wait for tired humans. He rigged a crude sensor using leftover circuits from a drone, a motion detector to alert him to movement outside. It wasn't much, but it was the only protection he could provide. Night fell quickly under the twin suns and the temperature plummeted. Ethan shivered, dragging an old thermal blanket over the creatures. They shivered too, but slowly began to relax under his warmth. He could hear their breathing, soft and uneven. It was a sound that tethered him to a responsibility he had never asked for but now could not abandon. He sat in silence, listening to the desert, the storm outside, the creak of metal. Every shadow could hide a threat. Every whistle of wind could mask footsteps. His heart pounded, not with fear of the creatures but fear for them. He had survived the expanse alone for years, relying on cunning and quick reflexes. But tonight, for the first time, someone else depended on him. Hours passed. The storm outside raged, lightning flaring against the horizon. Ethan tightened his grip on a makeshift staff, his eyes never leaving the shadowed doorway. Then a sound, a whisper of movement closer than the storm, made him stiffen. His pulse quickened. Raiders? Or worse. He had no weapons, only his wits and two fragile lives depending on him. The creatures shifted, one brushing against his leg as if sensing the tension in him. Ethan's jaw set. He would not fail them. Not now. Not ever. He had faced impossible odds before and he would face them again. Whatever approached outside, he would protect them. Somehow. Somehow he would survive. Then, through the haze of sand and darkness, a glowing shimmer appeared at the edge of the dome, moving unnaturally fast. Ethan's eyes widened. He had no idea what it was. But instinct told him it was unlike anything he had faced before, and it was coming closer, directly toward him and the two small fragile dragons. Ethan braced himself. The night had just begun, and the desert had a new threat waiting for him. The shimmer at the edge of the dome vanished as suddenly as it appeared, leaving Ethan's heart hammering. He wiped sand from his eyes and crouched, scanning the horizon. The desert was silent again, but the warning in his gut would not let him relax. Whatever had approached, it was fast, intelligent, and dangerous. Raiders didn't move like that. Ethan shifted to check the creatures. Corin, the larger dragon, crouched low, eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, while Lyra, smaller and more fragile, pressed herself against him. He reached out, brushing a hand over their scales. "It's okay," he murmured, though his voice carried no certainty. "I've got you. I won't let anything hurt you." Night deepened. Inside the dome, shadows danced over patched walls. Ethan started inspecting the makeshift sensor, rewiring a loose circuit. One failure and the dome would be blind to approaching threats. He felt sweat on his brow, irritation and exhaustion gnawing at him, but the creature's survival was non-negotiable. He tightened the final connection and held his breath. A faint beep confirmed the system was live. Then came the sound. Faint at first, but unmistakable, the crack of a sand-covered metal panel collapsing somewhere nearby. Ethan froze. Raiders? Or some desert predator? He grabbed the staff he had reinforced from scrap metal and edged toward the noise, keeping the dragons behind him. His breath came in slow, controlled bursts. Every second counted. A shadow darted along the rim of the dome. Corin hissed, a low warning sound that echoed in the small structure. Ethan stepped forward, raising the staff. The shadow surged into the doorway, a small desert scavenger, nothing larger than a dog. Relief hit him like a wave, but it was short-lived. The desert offered little mercy, and even small threats could kill in the wrong moment. He exhaled and returned to the dragons. They were hungry again, their eyes pleading. Ethan had barely enough rations to feed himself for the next 2 days. Sharing with them would leave him weak, but he didn't hesitate. He broke the last of his protein gel into pieces and fed them carefully. Corin ate methodically, Lyra gulped greedily, and Ethan felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mixture of fear and pride. But the calm didn't last. Outside, the storm shifted, a low rumble rolling through the sands like distant thunder. Ethan's sensors flickered and died. The dome shuddered under sudden gusts of wind, and a section of the roof sagged. Sand poured in through the cracks. He yelled, "Stay close," and shoved the dragons toward the center. With adrenaline flooding him, he worked quickly, hammering metal plates into place, tying broken panels with frayed wire. Every second was a gamble, but hesitation could mean death. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the desert in brief, violent flashes. Ethan paused, counting his heartbeats. He could feel the raw cold seeping through the dome, chilling him to the bone. He shivered but ignored it, adjusting a loose panel just as a strong gust threatened to tear it away. Corin lashed out instinctively, knocking over a stack of scrap metal that nearly crushed Ethan. He caught himself and yanked Corin back, heart pounding. "Careful. We're a team, remember?" Hours passed. Ethan's hands were cut, his back ached, and exhaustion threatened to crush his focus, but the creatures remained safe for now. He realized as he worked that the dragons were learning from him. Their eyes followed his movements, and Corin mimicked a defensive stance when a shard of metal fell. Even Lyra, timid and small, flinched less at the wind's roar than she had the night before. A new danger approached silently, though Ethan could not detect it immediately. Through the shifting sand he saw a faint glow. The dragons stiffened. Their instincts were faster than his sensors and he trusted them. He grabbed a broken panel and held it like a shield, crouching. The glow grew, strange and pulsating, unlike any human tech he had seen. Corin's scales shimmered, reflecting the light. Lyra's wings fluttered nervously. Ethan realized this was not raiders, not predators, not even drones. Something different. Something intelligent. He had to think quickly. The storm made movement hazardous, the dome barely standing, and yet he couldn't abandon the dragons. He scanned the sand and saw a small opening beneath a rock formation outside. Risking exposure, he could lead them there if needed. But what if the glowing thing followed? Or worse, attacked? The desert was merciless, and he had only his wit, courage, and the 2 fragile lives relying on him. A sudden pulse of light struck the dome wall. Ethan ducked instinctively, heart hammering. Sand poured in and one of the support beams cracked. He could hear Corin growling low, a sound that mixed fear and fury. Ethan made a decision. He would not wait for the threat to reach them. "Follow me," Now, he shouted, grabbing both dragons. With the wind lashing against them and the storm tearing at the dome, he ran. Sand stung his face, cutting visibility to almost zero. Behind him, the dome began to collapse in pieces, a reminder that time had already run out. Somehow, they had to survive, and he had to keep them alive long enough to see another day. And then, as he stumbled toward the shadowy rock formation, the glow surged again, closer, brighter, and unmistakably alive. Ethan's pulse quickened. Whatever was out here, whatever had followed them through the storm, was watching. And it was coming for them. He tightened his grip on the dragons and prepared to fight. The glow surged closer, weaving through the storm like liquid fire. Ethan's breath came in short gasps, sand whipping against his face and filling his eyes. He tightened his grip on Corin and Lyra, feeling their trembling bodies beneath his arms. Whatever this was, it was unlike anything he had ever encountered. It moved with purpose, intelligence, a rhythm that made his chest tighten with unease. They reached the shadowed rock formation, jagged and half-buried in sand. Ethan pressed the dragons against him, feeling the rough stone bite into his back. The glow paused on the other side, pulsating steadily. He could sense it studying him, and a cold thought struck him. It wasn't just a threat, it was curious. Dangerous, yes, but curious. He looked at the dragons. Corin hissed softly, scales shimmering like faint starlight, while Lyra pressed closer, eyes wide. Ethan realized something crucial. They weren't just frightened. They were alert, ready to respond. They had been learning from him. Every instruction, every survival tactic he had taught them, every small act of trust, he had unknowingly been preparing them for this moment. Ethan set the dragons down gently and raised his hands. "Stay behind me," he whispered. The glow seemed to hesitate, almost sensing the unspoken warning in his tone. Then it pulsed again, faster, moving toward them. Ethan scanned the sand for anything he could use as a weapon. Nothing substantial. Only scraps of metal, shards of old circuitry, a few broken panels. But maybe he didn't need a weapon in the traditional sense. Maybe he needed a plan. He thought quickly. The glow responded to energy patterns, he realized. The malfunctioning sensors in the old dome had pulsed once earlier, triggering its approach. Maybe he could use it. He grabbed a loose battery pack from his pack and tossed it toward the open sand. It sparked, creating a small burst of light. The glow shifted instantly, drawn to it. Ethan exhaled. Improvisation worked. The glow pulsed again, faster this time, almost like it was assessing him. Ethan edged backward, leading the dragons toward a narrow canyon between two rock spires. The terrain was rough, but the narrow path limited the glow's movement. As they ran, he noticed Corin's tail brushing against a jagged rock, leaving faint scratches in the sand. Lyra's wings fluttered, kicking up dust. Together, the dragons moved with a rhythm that mirrored his own. He realized something startling. They understood his intentions without words. Reaching a narrow ledge, Ethan stopped. The glow advanced, pulsing with a strange intelligence. Ethan could see faint outlines now, an almost dragon-like shape, but made of shifting light, translucent and shimmering. It was alive, but not in any way humans were used to. He had no weapon. No way to fight it. Yet somehow his mind raced, seeking a solution. "Follow my lead," he muttered to the dragons. "We do this together." He gestured, and Corin stepped forward first, scales glinting in the faint storm light. The glow hesitated, reacting to the large creature. Then Ethan nudged Lyra forward. The smaller dragon moved carefully but confidently, trusting his guidance. Together, the three of them formed a line, a unified front. Ethan realized the moment was not about brute force. It was about intelligence, coordination, and courage. He scanned the sand for more debris and grabbed a fractured mirror-like panel. Holding it toward the glow, he angled it so that the pulsing light reflected back. The glow shifted, reacting to its own reflection, slowing, circling, studying. Ethan felt a surge of hope. The creatures were learning too. They understood his cues, mirrored his tactics. He could see it now. With strategy, intelligence, and trust, even an impossible situation could be managed. Suddenly, the glow pulsed violently, almost in alarm. A smaller light flickered behind it. Ethan's mind raced. More were coming? He had to act fast. He pointed toward a crevice, signaling Corin and Lyra to move. The dragons obeyed immediately, slipping through the narrow rock channel. The glow followed but became momentarily trapped against the canyon walls. The tight space limited its movement, giving Ethan a chance to think. He realized then that survival was about more than just brute strength. It was about courage, quick thinking, and forming a bond with the creatures he protected. For 5 years he had been alone. Now together they had a chance. He took a deep breath, his pulse steadying. He would not fail them. Not now. The storm began to ease, the sand settling around them. The glow recoiled, pulsing once more, then retreated back toward the open desert. Ethan didn't relax completely. He knew this wasn't over. But for the first time he allowed himself a faint smile. The dragons looked up at him, eyes shining with trust and understanding. Ethan felt something powerful. They had survived the desert, survived the storm, and survived an intelligent threat that could have destroyed them all. His courage had guided them, his quick thinking had given them an edge, and his bond with the dragons had created a strength neither he nor they possessed alone. As the first pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, Ethan scanned the desert. In the distance, a glint caught his eye, an unmistakable shimmer, distant but deliberate. It was not the storm. Not the desert. Something else. Something waiting. Ethan tightened his jaw and picked up the dragons. Whatever was coming next, he knew one thing. He could not run. He could not hide. And he would protect them no matter the odds. The desert had taught him to survive, but the coming threat would test everything he knew about courage, intelligence, and human determination. He tightened the strap of his pack, adjusted the dragons, and began moving toward higher ground, toward vantage points he could use. The desert was vast, but for the first time he felt a strategy forming in his mind. He was not helpless. He was not alone. Together they would face whatever came. And somewhere beyond the horizon, unseen yet purposeful, the source of the glow was waiting, watching, calculating. Ethan did not yet know what it wanted, only that the next encounter would decide whether they survived, or vanished into the sands forever. Ethan climbed the rocky ridge, the dragons clinging tightly to his arms. The wind had died down, but the desert was still harsh, every step a challenge. He squinted at the horizon. The glow that had stalked them through the storm shimmered again, larger now, moving with precision. It wasn't alone. Faint echoes of smaller pulses flickered in the distance, and Ethan realized the creatures were tracking them, testing them, gauging their reactions. He lowered himself behind a jagged outcrop and studied the terrain. The ridge offered vantage points, choke points, places where the dragon's unique abilities could give them an edge. He traced a rough plan in his mind. "We can't fight blindly," he murmured. "We need a strategy." His voice was calm, but inside, adrenaline surged. Failure meant death not just for him but for Corin and Lyra. The larger dragon, Corin, shifted beside him. Ethan could feel the creature's heartbeat, fast and alert. Lyra pressed against his chest, trembling slightly, yet her eyes sparkled with determination. They had learned from him. They were no longer helpless. Their trust in him, and his trust in them, was their weapon. Ethan scavenged from his pack. A few shards of reflective metal, a tangle of frayed wires and an old signal emitter. He fastened the wires to the emitter, creating a crude, improvised beacon. Then he pointed at the ridge above. "Corin, up there. Lyra, circle low and wait for my signal." Both dragons obeyed instinctively, their training and bond guiding them. The glow advanced, larger pulses radiating as it approached the ridge. Ethan's breath slowed. Every nerve was focused. He activated the emitter, sending a high-frequency pulse into the air. The glow shifted, reacting immediately to the energy. Ethan nodded to Corin. The larger dragon leapt to a higher ledge, scales reflecting the pulse, emitting a faint glow of its own. Lyra swooped low, weaving between rocks, her small frame hard to detect. The glowing entity paused, then surged forward with sudden speed, underestimating the narrow ridge. Ethan held his ground, his mind calculating constantly. Every action had a consequence. One misstep and the desert would claim them. But the dragons moved as extensions of his strategy, adapting in real time. A smaller pulse flickered nearby, another probe. Ethan realized the creature wasn't alone. It was part of a network, testing patterns, responses. He gritted his teeth and acted fast. Mirror it. Reflect its light back at it. He gestured toward the reflective shards. Corin nudged a shard with a claw, sending a refracted flash of light directly at the probe. Lyra followed, flicking her tail to redirect sparks. The probe recoiled, and for a moment the advantage was theirs. Ethan's heart pounded, but he didn't falter. He scanned the canyon below. The ridge narrowed, the glow had limited room to maneuver. He made a split-second decision. We trap it. Lead it to the canyon bend. Both dragons responded, Corin bounding with power, Lyra twisting midair, guiding the larger entity through the terrain. The glow surged after them, pulsing rapidly. Sand and small rocks tumbled in its path. Ethan activated his last improvised device, a small charge designed to amplify light pulses. A blinding flare erupted, reflecting off the dragon's scales, creating a chaotic, dazzling display. The glow faltered, its movements disoriented by the combined signals and reflections. Ethan seized the moment. Now hold steady. Corin leapt to the ledge, blocking the path. Lyra darted low, guiding the glow into a narrow crevice. The entity paused, trapped between the rock walls and the dragon's strategic positions. Ethan's pulse surged, sweat running down his face. The impossible odds, they had survived them. Through courage, intelligence, and unshakable determination, he had turned a superior, unknown force into a controlled encounter. The glow pulsed one final time, almost as if acknowledging its defeat. Then it dissipated, folding into itself, leaving a faint shimmer that faded with the rising sun. Ethan sank to his knees, exhaustion and relief flooding him. The dragons pressed close, eyes shining with recognition. They had not only survived, they had adapted, learned, and triumphed under his guidance. Ethan exhaled slowly. He looked over the desert. The wind carried no threat now, only the golden light of dawn. The impossible had been overcome, not by brute force, but by strategy, courage, and the bond between human and dragons. He had turned a life of survival into a moment of victory, proving that ingenuity and determination could surpass raw power. Corin nudged him gently, a silent acknowledgement, while Lyra rested her head against his chest. Ethan realized then that he had done more than save two creatures. He had forged a partnership that transcended species, one that would leave a mark far beyond this barren desert. And yet, even in triumph, a faint shimmer appeared on the horizon, distant but deliberate. It was not part of the storm, not random. It was waiting, observing, calculating. Ethan's jaw tightened. The battle was won, but the larger game, the one that had been set in motion years ago when he first found the dragons, was far from over. He rose slowly, brushing the dust from his clothes. "We survived this," he said softly, looking at the dragons. "But we have to be ready. They're not done with us." Corin growled low in agreement, and Lyra's eyes sparkled with determination. Ethan's mind raced. The desert had tested them and they had prevailed. The next challenge would be greater, but he knew now that courage, intelligence, and trust were stronger than fear. As the sun rose fully, casting long shadows across the sands, Ethan looked back at the path they had taken. The collapsed dome, the storm's scars, the rough terrain, they had all been obstacles but none insurmountable. He glanced at the dragons, then up at the faint shimmer in the distance. Whatever awaited them, they would face it together. Ethan tightened his pack, readied his improvised tools, and set a course for the high plains beyond the ridge. This victory had proven one thing: humans could not be underestimated. And as long as he had his mind, his courage, and his companions, no odds were truly impossible. The desert was still. The glow had retreated, but its presence lingered like a shadow in the sand. Ethan knew this was only the beginning. And for the first time in years he felt the fire of purpose beyond mere survival. A fire that would shape not only his life, but the fate of the creatures who had trusted him when no one else would. The desert stretched before Ethan like a golden ocean, the remnants of the storm fading into memory. Corin and Lyra stayed close, their scales glinting in the morning sun. The glow had vanished, retreating beyond the horizon, but Ethan knew it had been a warning. A reminder that the universe was far larger and stranger than he had ever imagined. He had survived, but survival was no longer enough. The dragons needed more, and so did he. As he adjusted his pack and prepared to move, a shadow fell across the ridge. He froze. At first, he thought it was another unknown entity, another impossible threat. But then a sharp whistle split the air, clear and human. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. A ship hovered above the ridge, sleek and silver, with markings he had never seen, yet somehow felt official. The doors opened and a figure descended, armored and precise. Commander Saren of the Royal Dragon Guard landed lightly on the sand. His eyes were sharp, assessing but not cruel. "Ethan Calder," he said, voice firm but not hostile. "We've been looking for you, and them." He gestured toward the dragons. Corin growled low, wary, and Lyra's wings flared slightly, but Ethan held up a hand. "It's okay. They'll see," he whispered. Saren approached cautiously. "These are Drakari dragons," he explained, as though talking to someone who might not understand. "Rare survivors of a line thought lost centuries ago. Your actions, feeding them, keeping them safe, have drawn the attention of the guard. They are valuable." Ethan's chest tightened. Valuable? He had not saved them for reward or recognition. He had saved them because it was right. And now, the weight of the wider universe pressed against him. The commander crouched slightly, letting his gaze meet the dragon's. Corrin studied him, still wary but not hostile. Lyra's small wings twitched, her trust in Ethan clear. "I need to see their behavior, their bond," Saren said. "I need to know they are safe in the right hands." Ethan took a deep breath. He understood what had to happen. He could hand them over, ensure their protection but risk losing the bond they had forged. Or he could defy protocol, but that would mean certain conflict. He glanced at Corrin and Lyra, their eyes shining with intelligence and trust. They had learned from him, adapted, survived impossible odds alongside him. He could not abandon that. "I'll demonstrate," he said finally. "I'll show you what we can do, together." Saren nodded once, his expression unreadable. Ethan set the dragons down and led them to a flat section of sand, the ridge forming a natural arena. He scavenged some metal panels, mirrors and leftover wiring. He gestured to Corrin and Lyra, who immediately understood his cues. Together they moved as a coordinated unit. Corrin leapt and dodged, using his size to manipulate light and shadow. Lyra darted between rocks, her small frame perfect for distractions and quick maneuvers. The royal guard watched, impressed but silent. Ethan orchestrated the movements with hand signals, voice cues and improvised tools. Sparks flew from mirrors reflecting sunlight, shadows shifted, and the dragons responded instinctively. Ethan's mind worked faster than ever, calculating angles, reactions and opportunities. The drill was not just survival, it was strategy. Then, from a ridge behind them, a group of holographic targets flickered to life, simulated threats. The dragons reacted instantly, following Ethan's direction. They blocked, distracted, and maneuvered, showcasing intelligence beyond instinct. Ethan felt a swell of pride. These creatures were no longer helpless. Together, they were formidable. He had not only kept them alive, he had trained them to think, to adapt, to survive in ways no one had expected. Saren's eyes widened. "Remarkable," he said quietly. "They trust you completely. And you have done more than keep them alive. You've taught them to thrive." Ethan exhaled, lowering his hands. The demonstration was complete. The desert wind carried a new calm, the morning sun bright, and the threat of the storm long gone. Corrin nudged him gently, and Lyra rested her head against his chest. The bond they shared was undeniable, unbreakable. Saren extended a hand. "Ethan Calder, we would like you to join the Royal Dragon Guard, not as a soldier but as a human strategist. Your ingenuity, courage, and moral judgment are rare." Ethan hesitated, scanning the horizon. The desert had shaped him, tested him, and now offered a new path. He looked at the dragons, then at the ship waiting to take them to safety and recognition. "I'll go," he said finally, "but only if they go with me. Together." Saren studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "Agreed. Their bond is as important as their abilities." As they boarded the ship, Ethan looked down at the desert one last time. This wasteland, which had seemed impossible to survive, had shaped him. It had tested his courage, intelligence, and determination, and it had proven that humans could overcome any odds when they acted with heart and mind in unison. The dragons nestled close to him as the ship lifted. He felt a surge of hope, not just for their survival but for the possibilities ahead. The Royal Dragon Guard would offer them protection, training, and purpose. But the true victory, the one he had earned in the desert, was the trust and partnership they had forged. As they rose above the Hellion expanse, Ethan realized something profound. Humans were capable of shaping worlds, of facing the impossible, of protecting what mattered with intelligence and courage. The universe was vast, strange, and dangerous, but a determined human could leave a mark, even among dragons and stars. Below them, the desert stretched endless, but Ethan no longer feared it. He had faced storms, predators, and the unknown, and he had prevailed. He had saved 2 dragons, taught them to survive, and in doing so had proven the true strength of humanity, courage, intellect, and the heart to do what was right no matter the odds. For Ethan Calder, the journey was far from over. But as Corrin and Lyra stirred beside him, eyes bright with trust, he understood this truth: the impossible could be overcome, the extraordinary could be achieved, and humanity's light, like the glow in the desert, would always endure. And somewhere beyond the stars, the Royal Dragon Guard watched, knowing they had found not just a human ally, but a hero.